Welcome to this new episode of Digital Dialogs with Gururaj and Vinayak Khadye. Before we begin with the podcast, here is a brief introduction of Guru and Vinayak. Gururaj is a well-respected professional with more than 2 decades of experience in CXO roles in banking, financial services, and insurance companies in India. Vinayak Khadye has more than 2 decades of experience in leadership roles in consulting, insurance industry and also as a co-founder of a startup in edtech space. He is the founder of Techaways Consulting. In Digital Dialogs podcast series, Gururaj and Vinayak go beyond jargons and buzzwords in the digital world and bring to the fore the true meanings of these terms. They discuss models, methodologies, technologies, architectures, case studies, and challenges and issues associated with digital initiatives, which can help you as decision maker. In this episode, Gururaj and Vinayak continue to discuss the prospects and relevance of a wide range of digital technologies in 2023. Over to Gururaj and Vinayak.
So, welcome everyone to this new edition of Digital Dialogs. We continue our discussion on digital technology trends in 2023. And as part of our first couple of episodes, we covered the technologies that drove the first wave of digital transformation, which started around 2010, where we looked at primarily 4 technologies. They were popularly called as SMAC, so social media platforms, then mobile, analytics, and cloud. Now we move to another set of technologies which have been kind of fundamental to digital transformations, but they have been around for almost a couple of decades. And I sort of call it process automation or call them process automation technologies. So, process automation and process management, business process management started, about a couple of decades back with the advent of workflow and BPM technologies. So in the initial avatar of BPM, they came as workflow, but then subsequently, of course, they were popularized as business process management systems. And these systems came with process definition tool, uh, a studio to automate the processes, and portals. Once the process automation was done, users could then access the runtime environment through portals, uh, and they were enabled by the process execution engine, rule engine, etc. Uh, so overall, process automation started with BPM, but they were also accompanied by scanning and document management or content management systems, because in particularly in back offices and BFSI space, uh, business processes involved a lot of documentation. So if one were to completely digitize or digitalize rather the processes, then scanning of documents was very important. So BPM was accompanied by uh, scanning and document management systems. And now, in the recent, last 3 to 5 years, there is one more, technology which has got added to this entire process automation suite, and that is RPA, robotics process automation. So, process automation essentially is trying to, automate manual tasks, because in the earlier BPM avatar, while uh, process was automated and task was taken from one performer to another performer, essentially those performers were human performers. But now even human performers are getting replaced by bots, and they are performing those tasks. And another piece of technology which sort of again was foundational and which made process automation possible was integration tech. Okay, so initially, it came in the form of uh, enterprise application, EAI, as it was called, enterprise application. I think integration. So they were integration brokers initially. Then they were replaced by enterprise service bus, and now you have API gateways, etc. So uh, when it comes to process automation, these are the set of technologies that we deal with, and they are very foundational to make sure that customers and the end users get uh, a sort of completely digital experience, and you know organizations are able to manage DATs, productivity, etc., through these suite of technologies. So, Guru, let's discuss these technologies today, and it's almost now these technologies have been in use for a couple of decades, but with RPA coming in, and RPA is enabled by AIML, process automation is sort of now going to the next level. So
Hmm.
what's your viewpoint on these technologies?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, right at the beginning, you have captured the entire essence of the last couple of decades very well in a few sentences itself. If we see, from a business perspective, from a process perspective, you know, briefly you mentioned about the process moving from being intervention based to being a kind of a straight through situation. uh, what happens is, I mean, when we talk about your BPM imaging, document management, etc., obviously it is a physical kind of an environment where there will be human interventions with regard to controls, with regard to the decisions, with regard to uh, even accuracy and correctness of information and all that. Whereas when we take it further and further in the concept of automation, the processes become more and more rule based. And when we add the robotic process, solutions to that, what happens is that human intervention gets minimized to a very large extent. Okay, so for example, many of the insurance processes now, or the applications now, are straight through. Okay, so 80-90% of the uh, policy applications that are made in some of the organizations are straight through, in the sense they are input by the advisors, or in a few cases by the customers themselves, and then it just flows through till issuance of the policy. No human intervention. There are rules for verifying the completeness and correctness of the application. There are rules for underwriting the risk, and finally the payment automation. So all these things happen in a straight through manner, and the policy gets issued in a few seconds, or maximum, maybe you can say, a few couple of minutes for various applications to run through the rules. And all these are connected through APIs, where, as you rightly mentioned, internally, yes, we may have an ESB, and externally we may have an additional API gateway managing the entire transaction. So that is the scenario today. uh, and that's the differentiator for the business. Earlier, the business used to be in business hours, where the physical business used to happen and then get image or digitized, and then move from processor to processor, or a role to role, and finally get completed as a transaction. Whereas today, it's all done in an automated manner. Very few cases are going as an exception for human intervention and getting closed. So the business differentiator is now with regard to the quality of the data, with regard to the speed of the transaction, with regard to the lower cost of operations, everything. So the way we would be able to leverage these technologies would become the differentiator. It's no longer a matter of I mean, taking physical processes from across the country and gathering together efficiencies in terms of physical handling, etc. It's now changed completely, and all these technologies have contributed to that. So I would also say that while RPA played a big role when manual processes were being digitized and then automated. When it comes to a fresh grounds up process, uh, you may just work with rules engine and event triggers and those kind of things and process it. You may not even need an RPA if many of the processes are taken grounds up.
True. True. Yeah. So, see, there are a couple of observations that I have. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, one is that uh, you know uh, since BPM sort of happened over last 20 years, okay, or 2 decades. Uh, I've seen organizations. I mean, one is technology itself evolving. So, in the first wave, when early adopters went for pure play workflow systems, they just automated human tasks. uh, there was still no integration between the workflow system and the back end or back office systems, which could be core banking systems or core insurance systems, CRM systems, underwriting systems, loan management systems, all kinds of systems that uh, you know uh, companies, financial services companies actually used to manage their operations. So initially it was pure workflow. Then of course BPM came along with the integration piece. Also, during the workflow systems phase, most of the process definition part used to happen in in the form of coding. Actually, coders were required to do everything. Subsequently, when the BPM came, there was a process definition sort of studio that was accompanied with BPM systems, and business analysts could actually map the process, configure the process to a certain extent, and the coders actually did only the integration. So technology kept on evolving. As a result, I have seen companies, uh, in fact, have gone through 2 or 3 versions of BPM systems. So in certain cases, they were just pure upgrades, or in many cases, you know uh, companies actually changed the technology altogether, and went from one vendor to another vendor providing newer technologies. So this was one thing that has happened over the last 20 years. Another thing is that earlier there was a vision, and in fact, uh, I myself was sort of uh, what should I say, influenced by that vision, that organizations could manage their business process, as an independent layer through these,
Hmm.
technologies. Okay.
Hmm.
However, that vision has not really sort of come into reality fully. What I've seen is that in certain areas, companies took process automation technologies and build applications and then used those applications. But for example, in insurance companies, you know in new business and underwriting domain, okay,
Hmm.
BPM rule engines, they were used, applications were built. But
Hmm.
when it came to policy servicing, claims, and even other processes, okay, uh, organizations went for point applications which had workflow embedded in it. So the
Hmm.
vision of BPM, as an independent process management layer, okay,
Hmm.
has not really materialized as envisaged by many professionals like me.
Hmm.
And third, of course, observation is that uh, that many times, even like in new business, okay, or uh, in certain areas, uh, companies. So for example, I don't want to name a company, but there was one particular player which actually came with pre-configured insurance processes, pre-configured business rules which are suited for new business processes. Okay. And so they created
Hmm.
sort of an insurance application, okay, out of these uh, BPM systems. Okay,
Hmm.
so these are the three distinct trends that I saw in the last 20 years. How do you see the future trends? Okay, for
Hmm.
these set of technologies and their adoption in the corporate world.
Vinayak, I think, as I said earlier, many of these concepts were drawn up when there were human interventions in the processes. So that, I mean, this particular person would do this and would take a call, or move it to something else, etc., etc. So the task that was being done was uh, to a large extent defined by the roles that people were playing. I think now what's happening is a lot of these things are getting replaced by um, or represented by APIs within the organization, and the the digitalization of the entire set of activities. Okay, uh, is bringing together a change in the way the process management is happening. Okay, the reason I'm saying this is, uh, earlier you would say that, okay, I will bring in some papers, okay, so about the custom, I mean, let's take life insurance for example. I'll bring in some KYC papers, I will bring in some a physical application form, I'll bring in a check, I will bring in maybe the medical records, etc., etc., and then scan it and then push it from the person who is scanning to person who the new business team to the underwriting team to the issuance team, right? So and if you automate some of the parts of it, I mean, that's fine. And even if you put a RPA over it, it was just representing the user in a more automated manner. But now if you bring in digitized solutions for KYC, I mean, you're not going to bring in a physical paper. Okay, it is going to Aadhaar. It will go and check a PAN number in SDA. You are going to have a completely digital form. Okay, you will have maybe digital signatures. You will payments will happen electronically. So the entire concept of the process, where does the processing happen, of what data, who is doing the processing, everything goes for a change, and hence uh, everything gets represented by those APIs, gets represent, and all of them get orchestrated in the ESB or in the API gateway, right? So that's what is the change that I'm seeing, that this entire orchestration with the event management being done in the architecture is what I see as a major change. And given that there is going to be no constraint on human beings, uh, you know okay, there will be human beings for the NSTP cases, which will be as the exception. The availability of the systems, the performance of the systems, the integrations, the failure points, everything has to be, handled much better. The engineering aspects of integration will come into picture, and process management moves into enterprise architecture and integration engineering, as I would put it.
Okay, so now you know most of these technologies, particularly BPM, rule engines,
Mhm.
integration technologies, to a large extent, they have more or less matured. Of course, depending on the life cycle of the companies and their adoption, they are at a different stages. But most of the companies, the adoption also to a large extent have sort of has achieved the maturity stage in their overall IT architecture. The only reason probably IT companies are changing or going for replacements is because uh, the underlying core technology is maturing. Okay, and in order to make sure that their overall architecture sort of is up to date. Okay, and then organizations are changing these technologies.
Here we conclude the first part of the 2 episodes on intelligent process automation. Thank you for joining. Please like and share this episode if you like this podcast. Please subscribe the channel.